Hi, I'm Gary Dodd. Got saved in December of 1982, 1 week after the Potter's House started in Las Vegas.
Hi, I'm Mel Dodd, and I got saved when Gary and I first moved to Vegas in 1973. So I had been saved almost 10 years when I'd go to Prescott and visit my sister. When I went to visit, we pulled into the parking lot, and I said, "Oh my gosh, we're late." Betty said, "Oh no, we meet an hour early for prayer." So I expected to go into the church and see a bunch of mothers and children in the prayer room, and I heard men praying and just the rumble of men praying, and you could feel the Spirit of God. It was awesome. And so I said to Betty, "We really need something like this in Vegas." And she said, "Well, ask Pastor Mitchell." And I went, "Oh my gosh, he's not intimidating. He's a small man, but he just has an awesome presence of God about him that it's just like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can even speak to him." So I went up, "Pastor Mitchell?" I don't think it was that bad, but I explained to him how badly we need a church in Vegas like this. And he said, "Sister, I'll pray. You pray and we'll believe God." And it was about 4 to 5 years before he was able to send a church here.
There was a Foursquare church here, which we attended because Pastor Mitchell said, "That's a place you can go." And so the male pastor would preach in the mornings. His wife, the female pastor, would preach in the afternoon, in the evening. What she didn't go on to say was her sister called her one Wednesday night and said, "Your prayer has been answered." And she says, "Oh, cool, when do I move?"
But when my sis called, she said, "God has answered your prayer." And she's crying, and I go, "Where am I going?" She said, "Not that prayer." Pastor announced tonight in our service that a work is being sent to Las Vegas. And I went wild. I still feel deep in my heart just the excitement. These are not tears of sorrow, these are tears of joy. They were coming here. I was so excited. So they gave me the address, and I went and looked. I had the boys with me. I didn't have paper or pen in my purse, but I did have lipstick, and I considered writing on the window, "Mel," and put my number. But they had already given the man who was coming up, Howard Pennington, our phone number, and he called us. And we had him over for tacos.
Obviously had him over for tacos. Right? I don't know if anybody ever remembers a guy named Harvey Jett. He was apparently the lead guitarist for a group called Black Oak, Arkansas. So you can imagine that kind of music.
Country.
It was country rock.
Yeah.
Which I hated that kind of music. But I'd made up my mind, whatever the church has next, I'm going to hit the altar, because I was very convicted. And we just happened to have him in for 2-night little mini concert type thing. And so that's when I gave my life to Jesus. It's either the 3rd or the 4th of December. I think it was the 3rd of December of 1982. And well, we haven't looked back.
No, it was awesome. And we had 3 movies on the weekend. So a weekend before Thanksgiving, 2 weekends we had Distant Thunder and Image of the Beast, or there was a 3 series. So we had 2 of them. Then Pastor Howard and his wife went to Yuma Conference, came back, we did Thanksgiving. Then right after Thanksgiving, they did another movie outreach. I don't remember if it was the first movie before Thanksgiving or the second, when Mark and Lynn Looney got saved, and a friend of theirs, Don Jensen.
When we first got saved, Howard and Pam Pennington, Howard was the pastor.
We were a young couple, and we knew we needed God. And I remember crying out to God just to give me direction. And one of his friends came over, went to his mom's house, somebody left a flyer from the Potter's House when it was, they had their first outreach. And he headed in his car, and Mark and him went to get a 6-pack of beer. And their flyer was in the seat, and he brought it in to me. And I just knew that it was a sign from God. I knew it. And so I put it on my refrigerator. It wasn't for another week. It was the big 3. And I honestly thought it was a movie house, like a Christian movie house. And I was going to ask them, can you just tell me where to go? Where can I go to church at? And lo and behold, I went out that night, gave my life to Jesus, me and a 16-year-old kid that first night of the movie. And God just did a powerful work in my life. I was desperate, yes. And he answered my prayer. And 40 years later, I remember that prayer being answered. And I am forever grateful that the foundation that he laid in my life. And the biggest thing was giving me direction. This fellowship gave me direction how to serve God, and I'm very grateful.
And so then Howard announced the first service being the last Sunday in November.
28.
And so we had Gary and me, my mom and dad were visiting them, our 3 sons, Mark and Lynn, and their little son. He was just about a year and a half, 2. He toddled around. He could carry the little songbook around. And then we had a visiting couple, Dave and Marianne Gardner. I don't know how they found out about the church, maybe when we outreached. But so we really had quite a good little service for our very first service. And then it amazingly grew.
It was just real small,
Yeah,
700 square feet?
No, it was a little storefront on Valley View. It was 900 square feet. It wasn't very big, just a long room, and it was just real small. Maybe had 30 chairs set up, maybe, and it just a small little building, the same that we see when our guys go to Pioneer. Just the sanctuary. You walked in the front door, and the chairs are facing the other way because the platform's up there. There's a half a wall and then a little hallway to the bathroom. And so when people would go to the bathroom, you could watch them get up and walk down the hallway, and the preacher's still preaching. So it was just a very, very small building with a little room in the back for, that's where the prayer room, nursery, storeroom, it was all one. It's a very small building. It was 2 rooms. I remember just in the early sermons coming to service and him just preaching. I can't remember the sermons. I can remember how I felt. I felt the presence of God. He just had a big, huge heart, and he communicated that, his own heart and the heart of God, and we were just overwhelmed at just the reality of God, the grace of God.
He established this work by loving us and by making us feel welcome and by showing us there was something beyond what we had than just religion.
Well, see, we were 4 months old.
5. No, by the time Tom got here?
No, 4 months old, we go off of support.
Oh, yeah.
And so Pastor Howard is majoring in things to keep us together, to build us. And then April, May, June, July, he is sent to Alaska.
And we were like, what? We didn't understand. And then basically he said, look, I can stay, but it's not God. Or I can go. And we said, go. We kind of concluded, okay, this is the way it goes. Guys come for a little while, next pastor. And then that's when Tom Payne came in, Tom and Janice Payne, young, 23 years old, came. I think Janice was pregnant. Yep. Was she pregnant when they came? And
for Pastor Payne coming directly from Prescott, we were his first work. And Mark and Lewis and a young man named Mike Wright that was in the Marines. The 3 of them were basically our first real disciples. But Tom Payne had discipled them and laid the foundations that helped them be the men they are today.
Hello, West Las Vegas, Nevada. This is Louis Oliver. I'm the pastor of the Potter's House Church in Reno, Nevada. We were saved in Las Vegas, Nevada in 1984, discipled under Tom Payne, which we are very grateful. Great pastor, great preaching. He really helped us out. And then we were eventually launched in 1988 into Reno, Nevada. We've been here pastoring, having revival, planted churches, and we so appreciate the church in West Las Vegas, their efforts, they're willing to work with us, their support, and we're so grateful and we're glad that we've been a part of this fellowship and a part of this church. We're looking forward to going back for the 40th anniversary, and we thank you very much. Amen.
When we first went into the church, it was a little storefront, just a few people. And you know, you think worldly, what does this church have to offer us? But you know, what drew us back there was not programs, it was the presence of God. The other thing that really stuck with us was Pastor Payne's preaching. I tell you what, he could preach, and he was just a young man. And we would be at the house and we'd be all excited, ready to go to church, and we'd say, what do you think he's preaching today? What do you think he's going to say? And that really helped us to grow in God, because sometimes we don't read our Bible or pray like we should. And the preaching, hitting the altar, really helped us. And also a couple that followed up on us. And my voice is shaking. Gary and Mel Dodd, they loved on us, they followed up on us, and that really helped also. So, pioneering, presence of God. Thank you, Las Vegas.
Hello, my name is Brian Coulter, and I've been in this church for 38 years. I got saved in May 1985.
My name is Amanda Coulter, and I got saved in August of 1985 and joined the church in October of 1987.
I'm Ron Merkel, and I've been saved since 1983.
Hi, I'm Janet Merkel. I got saved actually in August of 1982 before our church opened here in Las Vegas.
Hi, my name is Margaret Robinson, and I've been saved for 36 years.
Hi, I'm Diana Holden. I've been saved for 35 years. I got saved in March of 1987.
For Pastor Payne, coming directly from Prescott, we were his first work. And Mark and Lewis and a young man named Mike Wright that was in the Marines. The three of them were basically our first real disciples. But Tom Payne had discipled them and laid the foundations that helped them be the men they are today.
We said, okay, Howard, when we developed a good friendship. We loved the guy. And so, okay, and then Pastor Payne came in. I remember Pastor Pennington gathering me and probably Don Jensen, my friend, Gary Dodd, Mike Krug, a couple of the guys, Gary Ewald, and said, hey, we got a new you guys have a new pastor coming in. I want you to, first thing I want you to tell him when he walks through that door is, hello, Pastor Payne, we're behind you. And so we did that. Each one of us did that. And I looked back down. He's like, oh, okay. And he just gave us some direction. There was, I was leading songs by then. He put me up there pretty quickly. I didn't have the exact attire. Every now and again, I'd wear flip-flops. And he said, get some shoes when the new pastor comes. And so I did, and we all like, hey, okay, we're going to straighten up here a bit. That's kind of what it was. And we just accepted Pastor Payne right away. He's a wonderful guy. And he came in, he just began to impart Prescott and his discipleship.
When I got saved, Pastor Tom Payne was my pastor. So when I started coming to church, it was about 30 people coming, 30, and then we slowly grew from there. I was really one of the only single guys in church at that time, so everybody was married and had kids. And, there was a couple people here and there that came in and got saved, but they didn't stick around, or they moved around. So there was a guy named Monty that was saved when I got saved. But other than that, it was just me and all the married folks. So it was a really tight-knit group of people. It was a lot of fun. They babied me. I was spoiled. They followed up on me, gave me rides to church. Pastor Oliver gave me rides to church, and remember, I think he had a Chrysler New Yorker. It was a big, fancy car. It was cool.
I had to come and see what this church was about, and so when I got here, I mean, I have all these thoughts in my head of what the church would look like, and when I got here, the church was actually just a few people up on Jones and Charleston, about a 1,200 square foot building. And I was going to this big concert that I was real excited about, and it was actually just a few people sitting on the floor. And Pastor Looney had a band, and Lynn. And so I went to that, and then Sunday morning I went to church, and that's when I think I got saved at both things, you know, where, I mean, I prayed several times when I first got saved, but.
It's Pastor Oliver and Pastor Looney, they were still disciples in the church. So both of them, but I don't remember. I know they left like close together, but I don't remember which one exactly was the first one, but they were like around the same time. Our new converts now that get all sad and cry when somebody's leaving to go somewhere. I was like, oh, they're taking my friends. You know, I didn't understand it, you know, because
it was the same thing, you know, on Saturdays. Saturday prayer, we go out and we outreach. Then we have the Solid Rock, it was called back then, or the 180. And not even just, it's a fellowship message that gets caught, because it's really funny, because my sister went to a fellowship church in Huntsville, Alabama. And so when I went with her, I went to church with her, and they announced outreach, and my sister's like, oh, well, I want to go to outreach. She goes, you're crazy, you want to go to outreach? And I go, no, I'm going, because I wanted to see. And those people have the same vision that we have. Their hearts were linked, that vision, you know, it's the same.
So it's the same it was then.
It's the same now, and it's the same West Coast, East Coast, Africa, Trinidad. The fellowship, it's the same mission, the same thing of just reaching out, sharing the gospel, inviting people to know Jesus.
Pastor Payne, established a good solid 75 people, in that area, and then he felt called to go to upstate New York. He was going to Albany, but ended up in Schenectady, and he left a good solid core, and Larry and Ray Monteith came in. And a very nice guy, Ray, wonderful girl, wonderful lady, and good folks. And so they just began to ride the momentum that was already here. 6 months later, Yuma Conference, Lynn and I were sent out to the east side, over off Nellis and Bonanza Road. So he was only, he came in, and 6 months later he sent us out. And then the next Yuma Conference, 6 months later, he sent out Louis Oliver and another couple, Mike and Pat Wright, to Thomasville, Georgia. So he came in right away, and before a year was up, he planted 3 churches. Everything was established. By that time, we had our Saturday night music scene every Saturday night, concerts. We had outreaches, we had revivals, we had Bible studies and Bible study leaders. And so everything that even we do to this day was established, albeit in a much smaller form, but Pastor Payne established that.
We were probably pushing 100.
I would think.
Yeah, we'd held that for quite a length of time.
Larry Monteith was here for a year and a half, and then
called him to
pioneer work in the Philippines.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Pastor Rins came here from Missouri.
Yeah.
He was still a young pastor. He was here for 17 years.
And we bought our first building before he left. And then he was here, I think, like another 3 years, and God called him to Africa. And then Pastor Lamb came.
we're going to have revival. Yeah, we knew this back when it started because we were determined. We would have, me and our friends, we would have conversations like, we're going to have revival. You know, we're going to plant churches. We're going to have missionaries. And as just early disciples kidding each other, you know, you're going to go to Timbuktu, or you're going to Beatty, Nevada, or something, some joke, you know. That was the culture of the church. That's what we talked about. And, you know, living our lives as well, you know, experiencing life and all the challenges there. But ultimately, we said Las Vegas is going to have a church planting church. You know, those thoughts came a little later after we figured out what was going on, who we were, what our fellowship was, you know, and then we're like, oh, okay, yeah. You know, the Vegas church is fortunate in that from the very beginning, it always had a people who wanted to serve God and have revival. And it's had great men that God sent in here. You know, from the first one to our Pastor Lamb now. I mean, you know, we're blessed. You know, I don't know, looking back, where or what this church would be without the men that God sent in here. So I think that had a lot to do with that, I really do.
Yeah, it was just, we were all in and we were trying to win the world for Jesus. You know, we were all good friends, and yeah, that's...
We were like family. You know, like Brian said, we were always fellowshipping somewhere, and to the late hours, to the point that it would be like, okay, you know, no more 2 o'clock because we'd all come in on Sunday morning just kind of dragging because we were fellowshipping so late into the night after, like, back then it was called the Solid Rock Cafe, you know, and I think just watching us grow from where we were. I mean, we used to sit on the floor, you know, for our Solid Rock Cafes. We'd sit on the floor and on the little tiny stage and doing drama, and not, you know, just seeing just the growth, just where we've come from.
Yeah.
You know, it's been amazing.
So seeing souls get saved.
Yes.
The gospel is just so relevant, just like it is now, you know, and just the preaching and the Sunday schools and going on outreach and seeing people get saved, and it was just, that's what kept me. It was real, it was tangible, and it's the same way now.
It was profound. My sins were forgiven, and then I got filled with the Holy Ghost, and my problems were so great. The preaching brought me back. The preaching really, I was like a sponge. If you told me something, I'd do it. And the people here, well, actually, you know, right after I got saved, Lynn actually called me, invited me to an outreach. And I was like, what? Or I don't know what that is. I'm not real comfortable with this idea, you know? But right away, she took me on an outreach, and I was inviting people to our Crossroads concert, and I'm with the band, right? I'm with Pastor Lenny Lynn, so I'm with them. I'm like, they're in the band. And so at first I was just kind of going with her, and then as soon as I knocked on a door and I started talking to people, I was on fire. And that and the preaching and just the couples that were here that made me feel so important, it kept me coming back. I was absolutely addicted. I never experienced anything like that before in my life.
The preaching, you don't get the same preaching, you know, anywhere else. The change in people's lives. Like I said, I never had trouble with the law. I didn't do drugs, stuff like that. But I see these other people who have struggled with things like drugs, jail, different things like that. And they're changed. I mean, you don't see that in other churches.
Like, I've been through a lot of situations where I'm like, if I wanted to, I could use this for excuse to walk out and not come back. Not situations in the church, but just personal. But I can't, you know, because people in church, my kids, my family, they all watch me, and if I just leave, they're gonna be like, oh, she just did that for what? And to me, that's like slapping God in the face, you know, because no, he's done a lot for me, and how dare me even think about that? So I think that's my personal conviction.
By this time, we were over on the east side pastoring our own church, Lynn and I. Louis was up in Reno. Mike Wright was down in Georgia. And Larry felt called, and then Dwayne and Frosty Renz came in and took the church.
Pastor Renz got here, and then we began brick by brick, block by block, begin the building of what we are today.
Yes.
And obviously Pastor Lamb has augmented that and continued that for these last 16, 17 years.
And they just kept rolling. The church grew. They only stayed in our second building a short time. I don't think it was more than 6 months, maybe a year. And they moved down the street to a temporary building. They called it the Rainwater Building. God began to add. They were hitting 90 in that little building, Rainwater. It just kept growing. God just really began to move in that time frame. After Dwayne Pastor Renz had come, it really began to move. The church like tripled. And good converts. You got the Sheburals from that era. You got lots of folks that are still in this church from that era right there. And then actually we probably grew to about 350 people in the building on Jones and Spring Mountain. And then we were able to buy our own building on Sahara, up on Sahara and Rainbow. And that was our first building that we bought. And by that time the church was well established, growing. God was doing great things.
I've always heard Pastor Lamb, you know, from conferences and stuff, and so when he came, you know, I didn't. It was like when they got announced, you know, I was happy, and I went up to Gail and introduced myself to her at conference and told her, you know, that my name was Margaret and I was at church, and I was excited for them to come, you know, be with us.
This is a great church, there's no doubt about it, and it always has been a great church, even going through rough patches. The people of this church are incredibly welcoming. They are very supportive, absolutely committed to the vision that's coming from the pulpit and from the staff. But what makes our church's fellowship, what makes them what they are, is very unique in the church world, in the Christian world. You won't find the cohesion, you won't find the vision, you won't find the support, the liberality. Those are very unique to our churches, and I would say that this church is very much a model of those characteristics. If I was going to put it in a word, it would be faithful. And I say that not because it has always perfectly fulfilled the heavenly vision, but because even when it may have diverted, it always came back around to true north. It's like a compass. So it can get hit, and then it comes back to true north every time. So the one word for this congregation is faithful. That's why we're doing a 40th. If we didn't have faithfulness, we wouldn't be here. But there are a group of people here that are faithful.